Welcome back to part 5 of this Python course. This section covers multidimensional lists and tuples. A multidimensional array is an array which has more than one value embedded inside it. So just to reinforce the little example we did, I'm going to do another example based on something similar that we had, which is a list of marks. So I'm going to say marks equals, I'm going to put the first value in there, I'll call it maths, and I'm just going to put a placeholder value of 0. Then I'm going to have another subject, I'll call it English, and let's put a third subject in there of physics. Okay, so I have now created a list. The list contains subjects. It does not contain any marks yet. So I'll print out that list. It'll just give me the subjects with no marks. All the marks are entered as 0. We can now go and add some marks in there. So if I say marks 1, and I can now put some marks in there. I don't have to put one mark in. I can put more than one. So let's add in 2 marks for each subject. So for maths, I'm going to add in an 82 and a 73. For the next subject, which is English, I'm going to add in, let's go for some different results. And finally, I'm going to have some marks for the last subject, which is physics. And let's just choose some values there, arbitrary values. Marks 1. That is the index number for position 1. All right, so marks 1 is going to be 8273. So that list there is going to be put into that position. This list, 42 and 55, will be put into that position there. And lastly, the 2 marks, 65 and 59, will be placed into the last position in the original marks list. And we can see that simply by printing out marks. So if I print the list, we can see now that we've got some values inserted into those positions for those subjects. Now, to be able to access those marks, you need to use 2 index numbers and not just 1. So if I want to see the marks for maths only, I can say print maths marks were, and I can now bring in those 2 marks. I can say marks. Now, we need 2 index numbers. Firstly, we need the index number of this whole list, which is 1. Okay, that is position 0. This list is position 1. That will be position 2. So we've got position 1, and then the first mark is the first value inside this list, which is at position 0. So again, we place a 0 there. So if I want to see that first mark, that's all I have to do. I can go like that, and I can add another one in there, marks, again, position 1, and the second mark for maths will be position 1 inside this list. So if I run that code, it comes up and says your maths marks were 8273. So there, those 2 marks have been extracted from that list. All right, so just to recap, working with multi-dimensional lists is very, very simple, but you have to use the index numbers of the original list, or in other words, the overall list, and then the second index number for the position of the new list inside the original list. And that's how we extract values from a multi-dimensional list. And this type of sequence is known as a tuple. Now, tuples are also sequences. Just like a list and a string, it is a sequence, but they have two major differences from lists. And those two differences are, number one, tuples are immutable. What does that mean? You cannot change a value inside them. The second thing, which is a nice simple little difference, is that tuples use parentheses to create them. So they do not use brackets like a list, they use parentheses to create a tuple. So let's do a similar example to the one we've just done. I'm going to, instead of calling it marks, I'm going to call it results equals, and this time I'm going to create a tuple instead of a list. So again, a tuple is created using parentheses. So I'm going to open my parentheses and I'm going to put some values in there. Maths 82 and English and lastly physics. Nice values. Right, so now that I've created the tuple, if I print it out, we can see that it is being displayed as a tuple. So it looks exactly the same as a list, except we have parentheses at the start and the end of the tuple. So a tuple is created exactly the same as a list, except we use parentheses. Extracting values from the tuple is exactly the same as you would do for a list. So if I want to print out a result for one of the subjects, let's results for maths. So I'll say results 0 equals results 1%. So what this is going to do, results 0, remember results is this tuple. So results index number 0 will be that word there. Results index number 1 is going to be that value. So if I run this line of code, it's going to come back and say maths equals 82%. So it's extracted the value from those two positions in the tuple and displayed it in a string. So extracting values from a tuple is exactly the same as you would do for a list. Now this is the biggest change for tuples. I mentioned up here that tuples are immutable. In other words, you may not change a value. So let's assume now that the value for English is incorrect. 42, it should have been 52, it should have been a pass. So I want to change that value. So I'm going to try that. I'm going to say results. The value 42 is in position 3. That's 0, 1, 2, 3. So the results position 3 is equal to 52. So I'm going to change that just like we would do for a list. And when I run that code, it comes back with an error. It says here that a tuple object does not support item assignment. You may not change the value of an item that is already inside a tuple. So that is where that word comes from. Tuples are immutable. Once you have created a value in a tuple, you no longer can change that value inside the tuple. If you do need to change it, the only way of doing it is converting it to a list, then changing the value, and then converting it back to a tuple. All right, so that's it for multi-dimensional arrays and for tuples. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe.